such and such did what he did, so we gon' drop his homie. And if I heard your man told, we don't do no business. They sent my brother to the sky, swear to God I miss him. They know how I'm coming, double C's, I'm driving 63s, $80 for these little V's, these ain't no double G's.
Prosecutors in Montgomery County now say a deadly shooting that played out last month in a Horsham cemetery was justified. DA Kevin Steele said today that 33-year-old Arian Davis of Philadelphia shot and killed 29-year-old Daniel Hawkins in self-defense. Investigators say Hawkins fired into Davis's car with an illegally modified gun. They say Davis, who was at the cemetery to grieve a friend who was buried there, returned fire, killing Hawkins. As a result, no charges will be filed here.
In November of 2013, Dwayne Jubilee Jr., or Weeze, 20 years old, of the 500 block of East Elm Street in Norristown, was arrested and charged in connection with a shooting on July 4th that resulted in the death of 19-year-old Tariq Farrell. On the 4th of July of that year, according to court records, Tariq Farrell, or Reek, was driving with another man when Dwayne Jubilee apparently shot at the two. The Times-Herald of Norristown reported on this story from the beginning, and according to them, police responded to Mercy Hospital with a report of 2 gunshot victims. When arriving, one, Tariq Farrell, was in critical condition. The other was awake and his injuries were non-life-threatening. That second person was Daniel Najee Hawkins, better known as a Philadelphia area rapper, Foreign Boy Osama. Osama told detectives that he and Reek were driving east on Marshall Street at about 7 p.m. when their green Impala was suddenly shot at. The only evidence police have is the car, which they found at Mercy Suburban Hospital in East Norriton, with a black windshield and driver's side window shot out. Police were immediately skeptical of Osama's story, telling the Times-Herald that, quote, the crime couldn't have happened the way the victim said it did. Tariq Farrell was airlifted to Philadelphia for emergency surgery, but ultimately lost his life. All police had at the time was a shot-up car and 2 gunshot victims. The surviving one is not cooperating. Osama did talk to the police the night of the incident, as I said earlier. He later testified in court he was high on drugs and that he couldn't remember what he told police. He was initially supposed to return to the police station after he got out of the hospital to give a formal statement, but never showed up. That was all the information available about the situation from July 2013 until November 8th of that same year, when Dwayne Jubilee Jr. was arrested and charged with third-degree murder. The detective's theory at this point was that Jubilee Jr. allegedly began shooting at the car after an argument on East Elm Street between him and Reek. According to a press release from that time, he fired the first shot through the driver's window, hitting Osama. And as the 2000 Chevrolet Impala drove away, Jubilee fired a second shot through the back window, which hit Tariq Farrell in the back of the head. This is the most peculiar case we've ever seen, said Norristown Police Chief Willie Richey. We don't even have a crime scene, with Foreign Boy Osama, where Daniel Hawkins not cooperating, him being the only witness, and the police not knowing where the shooting actually took place. This was going to be a weird prosecution to try and win. In August of 2014, the trial for the death of Tariq Farrell began. The man accused of the crime, Dwayne Jubilee Jr., charged with third-degree murder, was confident that he wouldn't be found guilty. Before a jury was selected, prosecuting attorney John Gradle amended the lead charge of third-degree murder to voluntary manslaughter. In his opening remarks to the jury, Gradle warned that several of the witnesses he would call to the stand had some kind of tie to Jubilee and were not going to tell the complete truth. He even expected a few of his witnesses to, quote, go south on him that day. Dwayne Weeze Jubilee, formerly of Norristown, also faced charges of aggravated assault, possession of an instrument of crime, and recklessly endangering another person. The mother of Jubilee's 2 children, Jocelyn Sims, testified that she was with Weeze, or Jubilee, all day on July 4th, 2013, until he went to the laundromat with their 1-year-old son shortly before the shooting. She told the court that Jubilee called her and said he was being followed. Sims testified that she went outside to see where Jubilee was when she saw a green car stop in front of her. She said Farrell was pointing a gun at her when Jubilee pulled up and got out, leaving their child in the car. Sims testified that a few seconds later, Jubilee pushed her to the ground and she heard gunshots. She did not know how many gunshots were fired and if anyone had been hit. Later that night, she said she took her children to Philadelphia and was not sure where Jubilee went, according to court records. When Daniel Najee Hawkins, or Foreign Boy Osama, went to testify, he resisted at first. Remember, he already talked to police, but he never gave a formal statement and maintained he was high and injured, basically in distress at the hospital when police initially questioned him. Only after being compelled by the judge with the threat of a contempt of court charge, and he was also told not cooperating would hurt his gun case in Philadelphia. Eventually, Hawkins testified that he picked up Farrell on Stainbridge Street in Norristown before going to Philadelphia to buy drugs. He said when they were back in Norristown later in the afternoon, Farrell asked him to see who was in the white car. Hawkins began to follow the white car and lost it somewhere in Norristown. He said they went to Elm Street and shots were fired. Hawkins testified he was hit in the hand and didn't notice Farrell was hit in the head until after driving for a few seconds. During cross-examination by defense attorney Jack McMahon, Hawkins stated he did not question why Farrell wanted him to follow the white car, nor did he know who was in the car. He also said that he was high on the night of the shooting and did not remember what he told police when he was at the hospital. What was making this case hard is that Weeze and his baby mom were telling the prosecutors that he was acting in self-defense. Jubilee's defense argued that Farrell and Hawkins were out to try to start drama, allegedly over a drug dispute. During the trial, witnesses who included a girlfriend at the time, both of his parents testified. Defense attorney Jack McMahon argued that Farrell and Hawkins chased Jubilee in their car from a laundromat to his home on Elm Street where the shooting occurred. Witnesses testified that Farrell and Hawkins shot at Jubilee on another street in Norristown. However, investigators never found evidence that another shooting in Norristown occurred that day. Whatever really happened that day, only Osama and Weeze know for sure, and they were both given opposite stories. After 4 hours of deliberation, a jury of 6 men and 6 women found Dwayne Jubilee Jr. guilty of all but the lead charge. Jubilee was found not guilty on the lead charge of voluntary manslaughter, but guilty of 2 counts of aggravated assault, 2 counts of recklessly endangering another person, and 1 count of possession of an instrument of crime. Prosecuting attorney John Gradle said he was happy with the verdict considering the circumstances of the trial. "I think it's a good verdict considering the witnesses that were presented before them," he said. "They were uncooperative, they were arrogant, and they were terrible witnesses," unquote. Dwayne Weeze Jubilee Jr. was sentenced to a total of 7.5 to 15 years in prison. Willie Washea, who was Norristown police chief at the time, but has since retired, said it was one of the strangest crimes he's ever come across because investigators were not sure where the shooting took place and the only crime scene they had was the shot-up Chevy Impala. After the death of his friend, Daniel Hawkins for the next 10 years would go back to living life. What kind of life was that? Well, they called him Foreign Boy Osama because he always was seen driving some kind of foreign. Get money type boy from out Norristown. He dabbled in rap a little bit, but always had his hand in something involving the streets, whether it be selling drugs or robbery.
Such did what he did, so we gon' drop his homie. Bitch, I be booming off that fentanyl. We be living by murder, don't condone snitching. And every time we do a drill, I praise no witness. We hop out and walk him down, we don't do no bitching. And if I heard your man told, we don't do no business. They sent my brother to the sky, swear to God I miss him. We send them niggas back to God when we catch him slipping.
If you ever heard of him, it was probably from his feature with Quilly, which many say he killed that verse.
They know how I'm coming double C's, I'm driving 63s, $80 for these little V's, these ain't no double G.
Fast forward to May 30th, 2022, and someone posted on Reddit, "Quilly, your rad ass homie, Foreign Boy Osama, aka Daniel Hawkins, cool ass rat." This sparked a huge debate on the subreddit on whether what Osama did was actually snitching. I think it's best encapsulated in this thread.
The police in Montgomery County say a man was killed and another was injured when dozens of shots were fired over the weekend at a cemetery. Now, these victims were part of a group that was celebrating the life of a man who was gunned down 10 years ago. KYW's Tim Jimenez with the story from Horsham.
Investigators say 30 shots were fired here at White Marsh Memorial Park at Horsham Road and Limekiln Pike, and 29-year-old Daniel Elijah Hawkins of Philadelphia was killed. It was about 3 o'clock Saturday afternoon when police say gunfire broke out within the group that was part of this birthday celebration at the grave of Tyreek Farrell, who was killed on the 4th of July in Norristown in 2013. Farrell was shot while in a moving car, and authorities say Hawkins was the driver and was hit in the hand. And during this shooting, police say another man, 33 years old, was seriously injured. He hurt his jaw, arm, and leg and was taken to the hospital. Horsham Police and Montgomery County detectives are handling this investigation. The DA's office is asking anyone with info about the shooting at White Marsh Memorial Park to send those tips in.
On March 18th of 2023, 29-year-old Daniel Hawkins was shot and killed at White Marsh Memorial Park on Limekiln Pike. The shooting happened as people gathered there to celebrate the birthday of Tyreek Farrell. Whatever happened with their group of friends in the last 10 years is in the streets. The whole snitching allegation took a toll on Osama as people started to fall back off of him. People he once called his friends turned their back on him. Osama is rumored to have a lot of enemies in the street as well, all having to do with dirt he did on the streets. So on this day in March, Osama got the drop that his intended targets would be at the cemetery, so he grabbed his Glock with a switchy and slid. Somehow, even though he got the drop, he ended up getting killed. According to 6ABC, Hawkins came to the cemetery with a handgun that was modified to be fully automatic. According to investigators, Arian Davis and a friend were sitting in a parked car when Hawkins walked up to the vehicle and opened fire at about 3 p.m., according to the release. Investigators said Davis was shot more than once before he took out his legally owned gun and returned fire, killing Hawkins. Davis was shot in the jaw, hand, and leg and was treated at Abington Hospital. Davis was under attack and in danger of being killed when he fired his legally owned weapon to end the threat. For these reasons, I conclude this was a justifiable shooting and therefore no criminal charges are warranted, District Attorney Kevin Steele said. More than 30 shell casings were found at the scene.
Prosecutors in Montgomery County now say a deadly shooting that played out last month in a Horsham cemetery was justified. DA Kevin Steele said today that 33-year-old Arian Davis of Philadelphia shot and killed 29-year-old Daniel Hawkins in self-defense. Investigators say Hawkins fired into Davis's car with an illegally modified gun. They say Davis, who was at the cemetery to grieve a friend who was buried there, returned fire, killing Hawkins. As a result, no charges will be filed here.
I should have had the 30 on the 4th when I was willing.